Hey everybody, welcome back. I'm Matt. Thanks for stopping by. Now I've got another really simple pattern for you today. This one came from Morgan Lyle's Simple Flies. It's one of 2 flies in the book created by Bob Wyatt. Now a little bit about Bob. He is an author, a painter, a photographer, and of course a fly fisherman and tyer. But he grew up in Alberta, Canada, started fishing these very simple impressionistic flies there in the 50s, moved to Scotland, took them over to the locks there, they did well. Now he lives in Otago, which is a region in the South Island of New Zealand. Now I've never been there, but I do hear that the New Zealand trout are some of the toughest in the world. So this Bob Wyatt pattern we're doing today is called a Deer Hair Sedge. And we know a sedge is just another word for a caddis, and it looks very similar to what we call our elk hair caddis or our deer hair caddis. But it's got a little different body. It's got hare's mask dubbing for the body and the deer hair for the wing, and that's it, 2 components. So it's a super simple, very basic, impressionistic fly. It's a fish catcher, and I think you're gonna like it. Let's give it a shot. So there's one in the vise, a Deer Hair Sedge. Now common sizes for this guy are 10 to 18 or 20, pretty much an elk hair caddis size fly. I'm tying it on a size 14, standard length dry fly hook. And I'm going to use tan in a 70 denier. Don't need to take it down all the way back, just catch it in up front and then leave it up here, because this fly, we start wrapping the body from the front. So it's one of the tricks to it. So leave your thread just a little bit behind the eye. You don't have to leave it too far back, but put a little wax on your thread. And let's take our hare's mask. And this little dubbing blend that I make, I just pluck several of them out from right at the base of the ear, and then a little bit of the softer fur from the cheeks. And I mix it up about half and half. Still going to be plenty spiky, but with that softer fur, it makes it a little bit easier to dub on. Now you have a couple of options here. You could dub this very thin, the whole thread length, and then when you want to build it up in the middle, just take some extra wraps, or you could build it thin up to by the hook and then get thicker and then get thinner again. So I just probably put about 3 inches of dubbing on and about the same thickness all the way on my thread. Now we'll try to build a taper, try to build it thinner up front and then get a little bit thicker here in the middle. See, I might have to put a couple of these wraps on top of each other just to get it a little bit thicker there. And then, let it get thin back toward the tail. And add a little bit more dubbing if you need, because we want to get this body all the way starting toward wrapping around the bend of the hook. So I'm going to need a little bit more than that right there. Okay, I think that's going to be fine. It was getting a little bit lumpy there, but I backed it off and adjusted. So now we're wrapping the rib, and the rib is just your tying thread. So 4 or 5 evenly spaced open wraps going back up through this hare's mask just to really lock it in. Now you might want to take a few extra wraps up here just to get us some room where we're going to catch in this deer hair, but that's our body. Very buggy, but that's fine. Most of these hairs aren't going to necessarily fall out. Certainly not, till you've got a few fish already with it. Now for the wing, this is kind of up to you. Do you want a sparse wing or a pretty thick wing? Just use your best judgment. I'm going to go kind of a medium one. Put it in my hair stacker. Get a couple of good whacks, and let's see if these tips are lined. Yeah, I think they're lined up well enough right there. Now what I'll do before I tie this in, it's going to be about to the bend of the hook. I will grab it by the tips, and then if I need to pull any of these shorter hairs out, I'll go ahead and do that. So make sure your thread's hanging where we want this tie-in point to be, and then just measure it. That might be a little long right there. Let's try it right there. And one thing I always forget here, put a little bit of wax on. It will just give you a little bit more binding power when you're wrapping this, and it might help to keep this deer hair wing from spinning around. So I'm going to hold it pretty tight with my material hand, and I'm going to put 2 pinch wraps. I'm not letting go with my material hand yet until I get 2 fairly tight wraps. Now that front's going to flare and the back will flare a little bit too, but that's okay. Just keep a hold of it if you like your position, and then put a few securing tight wraps right there. Now if your wing hasn't spun around on you and you like that, then you're good to go. Just gather all these up front and let's give it a flat top haircut like we would with our elk hair caddis. Just kind of pull it up and then cut it off straight across right there. I'm going to push it up a little bit, take a few wraps up underneath it, and I'm going to whip finish up underneath this head, which can be a little bit tricky. You might just have to push it up with your finger for a minute, or just kind of go in here at an angle with your tool. And about 4 turns is going to be fine. And I'll show you where I put the head cement on this thing. So snip this thread off right here. And don't try to put head cement on from the top. That would just be a big mess. So I just flip it over, put a small drop right there, and let it absorb in. I don't even try to spin it around, and it's always held up pretty well for me. So that's it. Deer hair sedge, or caddis, whatever you want to call it, but very simple pattern. You can knock out a dozen or more of these in an hour. So that's all, my friends. I appreciate you watching. Y'all take care, and we'll see you next time.